Why do you lie? 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 Hi everyone, Telthany Truth Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new This World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die record. The World is a Beautiful Place is a Willimantic, Connecticut band. They're from my neck of the woods, and for a little while now they have been playing an amalgamation of indie rock, a little bit of post-rock, some emo too, the suburban blues, a touch of punk as well. A few years ago they made their commercial-length debut with Whenever, If Ever. In between the release of this record and their new record, they had that Between Bodies EP, which I did not like at all. I thought was loaded with tons of pretentious, horrific poetry. But thankfully none of that makes it onto this new record over here. Now recently the group has been signed by none other than EPITAPH Records, which is pretty awesome, and it's exciting to kind of see not only the band growing in popularity, but it's going to be cool to see if this impacts their popularity in any sort of way, or kind of exposes them to new audiences, and kind of seeing how other people will react to this Connecticut band. So anyway, once again, The World is a Beautiful Place is recorded at Silver Bullet Studios in Burlington, Connecticut, and they ended up coming through with a very different sound from their past several releases. These guys have been a pretty sizable band for a while now, like 8 or 9 members or so. However, on their previous releases, I've never really felt that large instrumental presence of a band with that many members, but I think on this new record over here, they're starting to really approach that. You're starting to hear a wonderful and very clean and clear balance of all the vocals, the synths, the guitars, the bass, the drums, the strings. And now that the instrumental isn't as awash in reverb or kind of tucked away and very far in the distance, the band is using this very clear instrumentation to create some instrumental intricacies in these tracks and write some very linear and long and constantly winding songs. A lot of these tracks are multifaceted and just kind of progress from one musical passage to another. Tracks like I Can Be Afraid of Anything or Mount Hum or January 10th. In a lot of ways, The World is a Beautiful Place, when comparing this record to their last, they feel like an altogether new band, and that's going to be a good or a bad thing for some people. I personally felt like while I did like their last record, a lot of things could have been improved, especially the clarity of the instrumentation. But for those who like their emo to be a little bit more, I don't know, blueprint, maybe they're not going to be happy with what the band is doing on this record. Especially since in the midst of this transition, I think the group has kind of taken on some characteristics, especially with the vocals, from the worlds of pop punk and pop emo. But what sort of becomes an Achilles heel for me is the lyrics, which are more upfront and more clear than ever on a record from this band. And they are especially weak on the opening track here, where I find them to be just a little melodramatic. However, I do like the backing acoustic instrumentation, and I love that little crescendo that the band reaches at the end of the track. The post-rock style guitars on this LP, while they are a bit cliche, I think they're done really well, and they sound nice, and they have this feeling of girth and weight and swell that gives the music a very heavy sense of drama. So if you don't care for pop punk, if you don't care for post-rock, if you don't care for emo or indie rock that sounds maybe a little Death Cab for Cutie influenced, I don't know if you're really going to care for this record, because these worlds continue to collide deeper on the record, like on the track January 10th, where a lot of the musical elements in this track are very familiar. However, I find the lyrics on this song to be really interesting and atypical for music in this style. The song here actually tells a story of a very real situation of a woman enacting a bit of vigilante justice in Juarez, Mexico against a bus driver or two
who had a history of sexually assaulting female passengers. The band basically endorses this action in the lyrics, and I guess it just makes for a really interesting and intense song subject, not really something a lot of bands sing about. I think there are some kind of corny lyrical moments on this track, though, where we have a male voice singing in a very boyish tone, "Are you Diana?" And then we get a female voice popping in saying, "Are you afraid of me?" Well, yeah. Shouldn't I be? The tone of the vocals don't really match the tone of the story, and if you actually weren't paying attention to what was being sung in the lyrics, you'd think that they were, I don't know, singing about a breakup or something. Again, I like the instrumental on this track, and I think the story concept is really cool, but why it didn't dawn on the band that they didn't have to deliver the vocals in the same stereotypical cadences that many vocals are on top of these styles of music, I don't know. Regardless, I enjoy a lot of the linear structures and the bright melodies and the growing and falling rock instrumentation on a lot of the tracks that follow this one. Even if this instrumentation is kind of matched with poetry that thinks it's deeper than it actually is, like on the song The Word Lisa, where we hear lyrics like "break the mirror, we get younger, and life is always weird." I just wish some of the lyrics on this record were just a tad bit more direct. I feel like The World is a Beautiful Place is constantly giving the lyrics on their records this very esoteric poeticism, so that when you're trying to read into what they're saying, you're only getting little bits and pieces of it. I feel like they're either using huge words or they're leaving out bits and pieces of what they're saying just so that they can make it seem lofty and important and really significant. But I do get a general sense from a lot of these songs that the band is rejecting a lot of societal pressures, which is a pretty consistent theme in punk music. I just wish there were more tangible themes, a lot like on the song January 10th throughout the rest of this record. With the track Mental Health, the instrumentation takes a kind of folky, rootsy turn. I think this track instrumentally is like a perfect representation of like fall in New England. It's like a wonderful, freshly picked New England apple. But I think my favorite track in the second half here is easily the song Wendover, one of the sweetest vocal melodies on the entire record. I wish the band, again, not just lyrically, but melodically, like on this track, was just a little more direct than they typically are. And the final few tracks on the LP here are two of the longest in the track listing. They leave this album off with a large, gargantuan, very triumphant feel as the record essentially kind of marches off into the sunset, especially with the song I Can Be Afraid, which has a huge post-rock-ish finish, while the closer takes a very more subtle and somber approach. And that's essentially the record. I like it. I like it quite a bit. I think The World is a Beautiful Place came out with another good album. However, I wouldn't say I love it. I think the band transitioned into a new sound here pretty nicely, but just like with their last album, I think there is still room to improve. I think there is still room to grow. However, now that they're working with an entirely new sound, my reasoning is a little bit different. The instrumental presentation, I think, was really nice. I don't have too many complaints when it comes to that. The vocals, however, I think could use a little bit more variety, and the lyrics are a little too obtuse from time to time, and again, trying to force this sense of poeticism that doesn't necessarily need to be there, and I think only makes it difficult for the band's music, especially on the lyrical side, to have any kind of impact. I think there's a kind of interesting collision of worlds going on here, because a lot of the lyrics do end up sounding a little sad or tortured in a sense, while the music on this record is really idyllic and sweet. That's cool, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because I don't think the music really enforces the emotion of the lyrics a lot of the time. And it ends up feeling like the band is trying to tease heart-wrenching drama out of emotional situations that don't really carry that much weight. Regardless, as I said, I do like the album. I do think the album is very good, and I'm looking forward to the next project these guys release. I'm feeling a decent, strong 7 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this record a listen? I got like a little bruise on my face or something. I don't know what it's from. What'd you think of this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano. The World is a Beautiful Place. Forever.